Good evening and welcome to the Mohonasen Board of Education March 9th meeting. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, for our first kickoff, and it's delightful to see everybody in the audience tonight, by the way. We have a slight change if you've got an agenda. We are going to start with our student representatives in just a moment. They're going to tell about some of the great things happening throughout the district. We're then going to welcome Mr. Austin and some of our student athletes who have been very successful. Right after that, we'd like to move up the personnel section because we have some teachers here receiving tenure tonight. So I'm hoping that the crowd can stay till right after the athletic thing for one more thing that'll be very brief. And then after that, I'll let everybody know that, hey, we're about to have some more lengthy presentations and you might have other obligations. So that's the shift in order of events, just so you're aware. And I think our student reps are up.
Hi, everyone. I'm Maggie, for anyone that doesn't know me. So first up, we have everything at Brat. They did Veteran Valentine's. Assemblyman Santa Barbara chose Brat to host a special event where students made Valentines for veterans. 50 second graders were recognized for perfect attendance. Valentine's Day took place and many fun classroom activities happened, a bunch of crafts and whatnot. They celebrated their 100th day of school on the 26th with activities and projects. The science fair took place with Broughton and Pinewood students making some great presentations for everyone to come see. And the principal, Mrs. Smith, is doing a bedtime story reading every Monday through Thursday at 7 p.m. on Facebook Live for the month of March.
Including tonight.
And here's some pictures.
Hi, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Tiana Harris. I'm representing Pinewood. To start off, we had Career Day. The fifth grade students had a glimpse into a variety of career choices during Pinewood's 8th annual Career Day. There were a total of 23 guest speakers, and each student was given a career passport to write down all they learned about each career. Dr. Seuss Day was a celebration of not only literature, but Dr. Seuss's birthday as well. Students and teachers dressed up as their favorite characters, and the teachers read Dr. Seuss books to the kids throughout the day as well. Dear, drop everything and read. Going into March, Pinewood is celebrating literature, so the students are continuing to read, and there are numerous times planned throughout the month where, like it says, they're just going to drop everything and read. There's been a fundraiser for the Ronald McDonald House where families are sponsoring students for their minutes of reading. The goal is to raise $2,000, and they are at $580 right now, so that's going well. The science fair was a huge success with over 100 students from Broughton and Pinewood displaying their science projects. Fifth graders visited my side to explore hands-on science and visit the planetarium. They learned about astronomy, weather, climate change, and got to explore the butterfly house. UAlbany and Mohonasen athletes visited Pinewood this past Friday to read to the students as well. There are some pictures of that. And lastly, Pinewood's color guard came in second at the competition in Johnstown this past weekend as well. And there's a nice big group picture.
Hi, I'm Teresa Ketty. I represent Draper and Mohonasen High School. So at Draper, we had the February Students of the Month. They were awarded for their growth mindset. We had trivia night, which was a fun night consisting of a team where you had to have a student and a parent, and they were asked some really tricky questions. And then we had the High Honor Roll. 133 students were honored, and they got donuts for their upholding of the High Honor Roll during quarter 2. And then the Odyssey of the Mind 8th grade team won their competition this Saturday at Shen, and they will be going on to compete in the New York State Championships. And then at the high school, the color guard took first again at their regionals in Salem and then performed their home show at the high school as well. We had Student Warrior Awards. 9 students were honored on the 25th because of their mighty warrior qualities. We started something new this year with NHS, so we decided to hold a fundraiser where we would allow students from K through 5 to get babysat by the honors student members, and the fundraiser will help us fund our induction ceremony that's happening later on in the year as well. So we're looking to have more dates. So if anybody has any kids in that range of age, we'd love to have you. We had the salsa contest for the Spanish Honor Society where we had, I think, 10 salsas, and they were all delicious. The Odyssey of the Mind, our senior team won their competition as well this Saturday, and they'll be heading to states. Our upcoming events, we have our Try and Workshop Day this Wednesday at the Cat Building. We have music yoga. We have a bluegrass band coming, and then Mr. Jones is doing his college workshop kind of thing to help us get ready for college. The Gaming Expo is on the 14th, which is this week as well. For Good Measure is heading out to Worcester on March 22nd for our semifinals. Pippin the Musical is happening on March 27th, 28th, and 29th, and we hope to see you there. For the sports, Unified Bowling, this is the first time Mohonasen has ever had our Unified Bowling team. States, Ziona Perez-Tucker went for track and field, Jake DeGear, Clay O'Connor, and Cameron Russell went for wrestling, and Ben Fusco went for swimming. And the varsity cheerleaders made it to states, and they also are Section 2 champs. The spring sports are also starting. The lacrosse boys started today, and track and field as well. So we're very excited to see what is to come. And then we have some pictures of everything. So thank you for your time.
Thanks, Rose. I think we're about to hear a little bit more about some of the success our student athletes have been experiencing. Mr. Austin.
Good evening. Packed house tonight. I think I might have something to do with that. If you recall, back in the fall, we started, I think, a neat tradition. We brought our sectional champions and our New York State Public High School Athletic Association participants to the board, one of the board meetings after our fall season to recognize our sectional champions and our NISFA participants. So we are continuing with that tradition. And as you can tell with my updates that I send to you guys at the end of each season, we had a very successful winter season. You can also tell by the audience here tonight. So I would like to just recognize some of our special accomplishments this winter season. And athletes and coaches, there's a lot of you, so I'll speak to you one at a time. And when you're up, if you can just stand when I will, and I'll share a few nice things about you guys. And then maybe at the very end, we could do a picture with all of our sports teams in the corner here. We'll send you on your way after that. Starting with boys indoor track. Can we have our indoor track, boys indoor track runners and coaches stand up? Behind me, we have Nathan Belcastro, Ben Paczabrowski, Davin Gulbranson, and Logan Morrissey. They were 4x400 relay champions, Division II sectional champions. They ran in 3:44.81, which was over 2 seconds faster than Burnt Hills, who was in second place. Congratulations to Coach Broderick and Nathan, Ben, Davin, and Logan. Mohonasen girls indoor track. Athletes and coaches stand up. Our girls indoor track team won the Division II sectional championship. That was our third consecutive sectional championship as an indoor track program. We also had individual sectional champions. Natalia Sawyer won the 300-meter and the 55-meter hurdles. Kate Sherman won the 3,000 meters. Emma Sindiscali, Jocelyn Countryman, Kate Sherman, and Rachel Miller won the 2-mile relay. We also had some individuals advance to the New York State Public High School Athletic Association Indoor Track Championships. Zai Perez-Tucker, she ran the 300-meter dash at the state tournament meet and ran it very well. New school record, 40.78 seconds. Natalia Sawyer ran 55-meter hurdles. She PR'd and finished third place in the state in the 55-meter hurdles. She also competed in the 300-meter dash. Congratulations to Coach Sherman, Coach Howley, Coach Julian, Coach Tassone, Coach Carney, and the entire girls indoor track team. Ben Fusco and Coach Matola, stand up. Ben's in that neat picture right there where he's flexing. Yeah. Ben Fusco swam the 100 breaststroke in a time of 1 minute, 0.65 seconds at sectionals to qualify for the New York State Public High School Athletic Association Swimming State Championship meet. Ben competed in the state meet this past weekend at the Nassau County Aquatic Center. He took 35th. Congratulations to Coach Matola, Coach Streeter, and Ben. Mohonasen cheer. Stand up. Quite the successful season for our competitive cheer team. I'm going to run you through some of their many accomplishments. At the Shaker Sweetheart Classic, they won first place and were named grand champions. At the Colony Raider Rumble, first place and grand champions. Columbia Devil Nation, first place in their division. Schenectady Midnight Madness, first place and grand champions. The tournament at Broad Alban, first place, grand champions, and best choreography. And at Saratoga, they were named Division II sectional champions. They advanced to the New York State Public High School Athletic Association Cheer Championships this past weekend at RIT, where they finished 5th place. Congratulations to Coach Kubal, Coach Conover, and the Mohonasen cheer team on a great season. Last but not least, wrestlers. We're missing one of them, but we'll still talk about him. Mohonasen crowned 3 sectional wrestling champions this year. There were only 15 sectional champions in Division I, 3 of which were represented from Mohonasen, which is pretty special. Clay O'Connor won the 99-pound sectional championship. Cameron Russell, the 285-pound sectional championship. And Jake DeGear, the 138-pound sectional championship. Jake, they all 3 went to states, which was at the Times Union Center in Albany. Jake finished 5th in New York State, which put him on the podium, which is the first podium finish for a Mohonasen wrestler in 37 years. I was told that Pat Ferry was the last one at Mohonasen in 1983, and before that was Mohonasen varsity football coach John Gallo in 1981. So congratulations to Coach Brandon Guthrie and his staff, and Clay, Cameron, and Jake. So, once again, yes.
For the photograph, will you hold off till we do personnel?
Sure.
One more item and then do it, so that some people can get up and congratulate our 10-year recipients, some people can do the photo.
Yep, sure.
So,
That's fair.
didn't want to interrupt.
Yep, so once again, nice round of applause for our winter sports program. And just thank you for your continued support of our athletic program. We really appreciate it. And believe it or not, we started the spring season today, practices. So we hope to have another busy room here at a board meeting in June with some sectional champions. Thank you.
Thank you. So am I going to do the vote part of it too? Or just...
Yeah, I
Okay.
would say.
So we're going to move on to personnel, which is one of our new businesses. So do I have a motion? A second? Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carried. We'd like to recognize the following teachers for their tenure appointments. Please stand up when I pronounce your name. Danielle Conway. Carmela Fusco. Rachel Schluty. I had can't think to look at those first.
Right.
Lisa Smith. And Nancy Felderbaum. Congratulations. And now we're going to have photos. Stand up and congratulate those, right? Is that what we're doing at the moment? Yes?
Okay. I'm sorry,
Nope.
I was
We're
distracted.
going to have them do photos and then we'll congratulate our,
We are, definitely. So, Mr. Austin?
we'll take 5 and anybody else?
Why don't we do girls indoor track? We've got the largest squad, so we'll have you to the back here. Here, we're here. Girls indoor track right in the back.
Congratulations again. Thanks for coming.
Evening. How is everybody? So tonight we'll be presenting our annual K-12 guidance program updates, and then we're also going to be highlighting some of the district-wide social emotional initiatives that we've been working on this year. Before I introduce the counselors, we wanted to review exactly what social emotional learning is and why it's important to educating the whole child. So social emotional learning is an integral part of education. It is the process through which children and adults acquire and effectively apply the knowledge, attitudes, and skills necessary to understand and manage emotions, establish and achieve positive goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain positive relationships, and make responsible decisions. Social emotional learning is essential to creating schools that effectively prepare all young people to succeed in school and in life. And the diagram to your right on the slide encompasses the 5 core social emotional competencies that I just mentioned, and they are proven by research to help students better succeed in life. And those 5 core competencies are woven throughout what we do here in our district. As you can see to the right, social emotional learning takes place throughout our whole school community here at Mohonasen. This takes place in a targeted and systematic manner aimed towards developing the whole child by meeting the developmental needs of students in each building. Am I getting feedback?
Yeah, a little bit. We changed microphones. That one you can be back a little further from than the old one.
Mr. Beck, I just moved it up. Is that better?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So by meeting the developmental needs of students in each building, but also the individualized needs of students in each building, as well as their families. This is taught, and as you can see in the diagram, in our classrooms with teachers and in conversation with administration, by providing a safe and positive and engaging learning environment where relationships are formed and developed, problems are solved, and positive behavior is modeled and practiced on a daily basis. Through our wellness seminars, the use of circles and restorative practices, as well as through explicit teaching of social emotional skills. And that happens in various classes such as health and PE, through our assemblies, and through our positive recognition programs like PBIS and other school-based initiatives, through our guidance lessons, and then also through our supports through guidance, social work, and psychology, as well as, even on the athletic fields with Mr. Austin and his coaches work with our athletes, as well as through a variety of agencies that we work with. So what are the outcomes associated with enhancing students' social emotional learning? The research shows that SEL can have a positive impact on school climate, promote a host of academic, social, and emotional benefits for students. And as you can see on the diagram, social emotional learning leads to improved attitudes and behaviors, an increase in appropriate behavior, reduced emotional stress, and overall that improved academic performance, college and career readiness, and overall positive well-being, which is exactly where we want our students to be. Through our climate and culture surveys, our discipline data, our student success teams, our SST or our CST teams, some of the holistic assessments going on in the district, as well as our pre and post assessments, as well as with our discussions with students and teachers and parents, we know that our programs are making a difference in the lives of our students, and they're preparing students for life well after high school. Here's some quotes that we wanted to share with you that our students said about our programs, and I won't read them all, I'll just read a few. But they are up there. For Brat, you help us with strategies when we get angry or mad or frustrated. Through Pinewood guidance lessons, I've reached some of my goals. I've learned what bullying is and how to take care of it. I've learned how to be kind, and I've learned about different careers. Through the Beautiful Me program, I really did find my true inner beauty and like to talk about it out loud. I came out of my comfort zone and loved participating. Through our middle school cyberbullying and safety lessons, a lot of people being bullied isolate themselves on the computer. They don't talk to anyone, and it can result in bad things for them. I started paying attention to posts that might be hurtful and checking up more on my friends. I know I need to tell an adult if I see things happening to another child. And through our Power of Peace program with Mike Arterberry, it really opened my mind, not only to myself, but to other people and how I see them. And through our high school peer mediation program, peer mediation made us more aware of our issues with each other and helped us to come up with healthy solutions to improve our friendship. It helped me see that there were issues with my friends that I wasn't aware of. It helped me be more self-aware of my role of possibly contributing to those issues. So one of the things that we've been working on as a district is to continue to enhance and build relationships with outside community agencies as an additional level of support to our students and their families well after they leave here at Mohonasen. We've been working with the AFSP, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, Northern Rivers, Schenectady County New Choices Recovery Prevention Program, as well as Youth Voices, just to make that happen. New this year through the AFSP, we provided suicide prevention training for all of our faculty and staff on opening day. We implemented the More Than Sad suicide educational awareness and prevention program to all 10th grade students in our health classes, and that was in collaboration with Mr. Austin, which is co-taught by both Mr. Stranahan, our 10th grade teacher, as well as one of our school social workers. We offered a secondary parent informational education session on suicide awareness and prevention, and we're planning a senior assembly for our seniors that will be preparing to leave us on coping with post-secondary stress and how to advocate for themselves in the community should they be facing mental health issues when they leave here. Yeah. Well, interesting that you said that, because right now, in working with AFSP, they really don't have a curriculum that they feel comfortable with for the middle school level. So we have been working with our Draper students through our guidance lessons and some of the other programs that we offer there. At the lower level, it's more about knowing your emotions, and when you're feeling unsafe, who can you go talk to when you are feeling unsafe? So that's through our guidance lessons, and our counselors can talk a little bit more about that. But we don't necessarily use the word suicide at that level. Like when I go back to being developmentally appropriate, we obviously don't want to scare students, but in letting them know these are the emotions that you're identifying, labeling their emotions, and then once that happens, where can you go for help if you're feeling unsafe in a variety of ways. Mm-hmm.
But moving forward, to have a good balance on, okay, is everybody who is presenting in that subject matter trained to do so? Or is it left to get elementary school teachers to kind of discuss this with students?
No, it's provided by our trained counseling staff, so it's part of a curriculum. So no, it wouldn't be part of something that a teacher would present on. But we can definitely talk about, that some more. Let me see. I think I covered that. So the other thing that we've been doing is working with New Choices Prevention Center, and that is in Schenectady County. In March, we're providing an educational session to all our 7th through 12th graders in their PE classes. And again, that's in collaboration with Mr. Austin on the impact and dangers of vaping, dabbing, and marijuana use, both the physical dangers and also the complications that can cause with mental health issues. And that's really in response to the epidemic that we're seeing with our youth and the amount of issues that students have had in, experimenting with and using those pieces. We're also planning a PD session for our social work and guidance departments to train them in supporting students on that issue. We're also offering a 2 sessions during the March PD Day as an option for all faculty, teachers, and what have you, so that everyone has knowledge on those topics. In addition to the work I just talked about with suicide prevention, we also added this year to all of our secondary school IDs crisis information hotlines. On the back of the ID, students have the ability to call a crisis line or use a text hotline if they're feeling unsafe and they want to reach out to speak to someone, and they might necessarily not want to speak to someone here at school or in their families. So that's just an additional support that we have added. The other thing, in accordance with the commissioner's regulations for school counseling, we started a K-12 guidance advisory council this year, and that's really set up to provide us as a guidance department feedback on our programs. And part of that committee were parents and then students as well as teachers and administrators. We did some pre-tests and post-tests to our students. The focus was on transition across buildings. So our 2nd graders going to 3rd grade, our 5th graders going to 6th grade, and our 8th graders going to 9th grade. What is working well with the programs that we have in place, and then what kinds of feedback, did our students give us to help them make that transition more easily. So we took that feedback, and you'll hear a little bit more about that in just a minute. Lastly, we started a K-12 mental health, wellness, and suicide task force. And again, that was in collaboration with Mr. Austin. And that committee focused on, for the first part of the committee, creating a district crisis folder with a variety of resources to respond to a variety of crisis situations. So they're there on hand whenever we should need those. We also added an additional Northern Rivers satellite clinic at Draper. Mr. Shine and worked with Northern Rivers to create that 2nd satellite office at Draper. So now at the high school, we have 25 families being serviced, and at Draper Middle School, we have an additional 25 families being serviced. And I wanted to just take a second to look at those numbers. The 2 counselors you see towards the right bottom, the one to the right, that is Jude Horan. She is our high school counselor with Northern Rivers, and Sean Mullen to the left is our counselor at Draper. But to date, Northern Rivers serviced 34 families in 2018-19 and potentially prevented 7 hospitalizations. In 2019-20, Northern Rivers serviced 65 families and prevented potentially 5 hospitalizations for a total of 99 families in less than 2 years. So as we continue to look at our data and we discuss student and building climate needs across our buildings, we continue to look at our programs and how we can enhance them, and rather really how we can continue to be responsive to our students' needs in our programming. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Brenda Relman and Amy Stannard from the K-5 program to talk a little bit about their updates this year.
All right, so as Ms. Kavanaugh mentioned earlier, we had our first advisory council meeting earlier this fall, and we found this meeting to be super helpful, as many stakeholders such as teachers, parents, students provided us feedback on current transition programs and how we could make our program better. So earlier this year, Amy and I developed a survey for current third grade students to get a better understanding of what worked well and areas that we need to improve on. So Amy's going to talk a little bit about that survey as well as the results and the feedback.
So each third grade class took the survey in October. The survey asked questions about their visit to Pinewood in June, which we've had in place for quite a few years now. The visit is divided up into 3 parts: a presentation to the whole second grade with a video, and then each class is split up by class and they receive a tour of the school led by 5th grade students and a visit to third grade classrooms. So questions asked were in reference to the visit. But the last question, most of the kids answered that they really liked all of those things that are already in place, but the last question gave an opportunity for suggestions. And from their feedback, we gathered students would find it helpful to have third graders come to talk to them about Pinewood, so visit the second graders. They would also like to meet all of the teachers that teach third grade, and they would like time on the third grade playground. We met with the advisory council and administration, and we brainstormed how we could implement this, which Brenda's going to talk about.
So yes, very good feedback. So after reading, over the results and reading through the feedback, we decided to implement a few new supports this year to strengthen the transition between second and third, also known as the transition from Brat to Pinewood. There's 2 transitions going on here. It's from second to third grade, which is a huge jump, but it's also from one building to the next building, which looks very different and it sounds very different. So the first support that we will be adding into place is, as Amy mentioned, lots of little kiddos would like to get more exposure to their new play area, to their new playground. So we will be adding a new area into the rotation. When the entire second grade visits to Pinewood, all students will get an opportunity to play on their new playground. I don't go to that visit. Just kidding, it's gonna be fun. So another support that we are going to put in place is many students share that they would actually like to meet their third grade teacher, but unfortunately in June we don't have that information yet. So we decided to add video clips of third grade teachers introducing themselves, and this is going to start the process of putting a face to a name to help with their comfort level. The third support that we are going to put in place is third grade students are going to be visiting second grade classrooms after the whole group visit, because after the whole group visit, many more thoughts come into play, many more questions come into play. So let's give the second graders an opportunity to share their thoughts and to ask their questions, and for the third graders to address those thoughts and address those questions. And this is something that we've done for years for the 5th to 6th grade transition. So 6th graders visit 5th grade classrooms, and we found that to be very helpful, and we're excited to implement this for our second graders going into 3rd grade. An additional support that we actually started last year outside of the survey is something called transition meetings, where transition meetings happen at the end of each school year in June, where every second grade teacher sits down with both counselors, myself and Amy, and they discuss their students' strengths in any areas of concern. So we started this last year, and both teachers and counselors found this to be very helpful as the kids are transitioning from Brat to Pinewood. So Amy's going to talk a little bit about the 5th to 6th grade transition, also known as elementary school to middle school, which is a big jump.
So we already have a lot in place from 5th to 6th grade. However, after meeting with the advisory council, which gave an opportunity for us to hear from middle school students, one thing that we will put into place in addition to what we are doing is here at Pinewood, this year we're going to try to provide more opportunities for 5th graders to practice walking in the hallway during transitions to special and lunch without walking in line with their teacher. So we're very excited to see how all these new ideas and supports for transition from Brat to Pinewood and Pinewood to Draper go. And now we're going to move on from transition, and Brenda's going to talk a little bit about home and school connection.
All right, so at both Brat and Pinewood, Amy and I have increased the amount of information that goes home in regards to topics that we're working on with students in support groups. So the intention of this information is to provide parents and guardians with tools and strategies so they can continue to discuss and work on at home with their child.
Also, this year we created our elementary school counselor webpage and linked it to the district K-12 counseling page, and it can also be found on the Brat and Pinewood pages as well. And now Brenda's going to talk a little bit more about Snacks and Share.
Yeah, so this idea has been in my wheelhouse for a while now. And it wasn't until February's faculty meeting I actually wanted to get the ball rolling and implement Snack and Share. So during that faculty meeting, a colleague was sharing what she does in her classroom to cultivate an environment of kindness and respect. So when she was sharing, I was looking at my colleagues' faces and I, saw a lot of head nodding, I saw a lot of eyes opening and what seemed to be like aha moments. So I was like, all right, this is the time to do it. So with the growing emphasis on mental health standards and the need within our district, I thought this would be a great resource for faculty and staff to support the social emotional needs of our students, the classroom and learning environment, as well as faculty members by providing them an opportunity to support each other. So the purpose of Snacks and Share is for faculty and staff to come and share out what works well for them with a student or what works well for them in their classroom. Their share might help a colleague with a similar issue that is happening with their student or that's happening in their classroom. So we had our first Snack and Share on Tuesday, February 25th. About 8 faculty members attended. We had a really great discussion on implementation of Star Power tickets, which goes along with our PBIS program, and how teachers link it to their classroom management system, whether it be Dojo, whether it be Blooms, whether it be a clip system, whether it be a sticker chart. So some teachers left with some new ideas to consider and try, while other teachers left with thoughts of how to do things differently in their classroom. So our next Share Day will be in March. My hope is that Snack and Share will evolve, like most programs do, into a beneficial moment for faculty and staff to gain tools for their toolbox to support the social emotional needs of their students, their classroom environment, as well as themselves. So Amy's going to talk a little bit about Pinewood Proud.
So last year and over the summer, are you able to click on that? Okay, so last year and over the summer, a team of us worked together to create a building-wide initiative to incorporate positive behavior intervention. In theory, it is similar to what Brat rolled out in the 2018-2019 school year with PBIS. On a whole, our school felt that we had a lot of this in place already, especially in individual classroom behavior management plans and through our many school-wide programs. So we took what we already were doing and created our first phase of Pinewood Proud. The matrix can be viewed, as you can see, which we rolled out in September of this school year. This included meeting with all faculty and staff, cafeteria staff, and bus drivers to explain the Pinewood Proud language we would use. The matrices created have been enlarged and hung in all of the locations of the school. This allows for faculty and staff to reference the expectations with clear and consistent language. We met with all of the students as well to explain Pinewood Proud in each of the locations. This took place in the fall, and we will be setting up another school-wide Pinewood Proud meeting in the spring to review the expectations in each area. This year was phase 1, which was the rollout, and we plan within the next year or two to roll out phase 2 of Pinewood Proud, which will incorporate incentives and rewards. Okay. Just some school-wide initiatives that have been going on at Pinewood that I have been lucky enough to be a part of. One being a service learning initiative, which our principal, Mr. Thompson, came up with to provide students with the opportunity to connect with the community and volunteer. Students have been provided some opportunities in school to earn service learning hours. Students helped out with the Boxes of Love initiative at Thanksgiving time and made holiday cards for veterans around the holidays. They also can fill out a form if they volunteer outside of school on their own time that counts towards their service learning. And the service learning hours we keep track of those hours, and then at the end of 5th grade, they'll receive recognition at the 5th grade moving up day if they've earned the service hours. Lastly, this January, as the chair of our building leadership team, I had the opportunity to help out with our first reading challenge, which we connected to the Super Bowl and football, since the challenge took place during playoffs and ended just before the Super Bowl. Students kept track of total amounts of minutes that they read each night, And then one student in each class was the team captain. And they brought their total minutes read down to a grade level rep each day. And in our main hallway, we hung football fields for each grade level, and each class had a football that would move down the field as their minutes converted into yards and touchdowns. We had a winning class at each grade level, and each class had an ice cream party who won, and representatives from their class to dye our principal's hair. Pinewood was also featured on the Spectrum News, and they did a whole story on the Read Bowl Challenge. The goal was to get students really excited about reading, and it certainly was an exciting 2 weeks. We were all very excited. Overall, Brenda and I really feel that over the past 13 years together, we have really created, shaped, and strengthened the elementary portion of the K-12 counseling program. We're really proud and excited about the program developed and look forward to how our program and role of elementary school counselors will continue to evolve, and we thank everyone for your support. At this time, we'd like to turn it over to Kira Grimsley, the Draper School Counselor.
Hello. They're laughing at me because we had to fight over who was presenting this evening. Of course, the pregnant lady lost, so chime in if I forget something. So as Mrs. Kavanaugh and the other girls mentioned, our advisory council has been a new initiative this year. We also had our sixth graders complete a survey on their feedback for transition from fifth to sixth grade. And it was very validating for us because, as Amy mentioned, we already do quite a bit of activities to transition from fifth to sixth grade, and most of that was really well received. So we're going to keep doing what we've been doing. But something that did come up when we met with the advisory council and some of our high school students, there was talk about the supply list and how that was a little bit stressful for kids coming in. And this actually reached more than just our sixth graders, but building wide. Feeling like there was a lot of materials they had to get, not knowing if they needed everything on the first day, feeling like they had to lug it all in. So we brought that back to our principals for discussion, and through that, Mr. Arquette met with our instructional leaders to bring it back to the team of teachers to streamline that supply list so that it's not quite so overwhelming, figure out what do the kids really truly need, what do they really need to bring that first day of school. So that can be a little bit more updated and streamlined and less anxiety-provoking for the students coming into middle school. In that conversation, it sparks the issue of cost as well for supplies, not just having everything you need and what do you need, but the cost of everything. So they are looking at being able to reduce the cost for families. And this year, I was told that we are being able to provide, this coming year, sixth graders and eighth graders will all receive calculators from the school. So that's really awesome. Excuse me. Our biggest undertaking this year is through the Pear Institute. We provided a 61-question holistic self-report assessment to all of our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. We were able to do this with the CSI funding this year, and it really provided a lot of information to us in regards to our students. As we're exploring the social emotional learning, this was really to assess their strengths and challenges, and it really gave us good insight into how students are doing, and it gave us results in tiered levels. So we're really focusing on what that all means. With this, we've been given coaching sessions from the Pear Institute, so I think we've completed 3 or 4 of our 5. And through the coaching, we are figuring out how to analyze that data, what does it mean, and what are our goals will be. Yeah. So with that, we also hope to do the post-assessment with our 8th graders in June as part of our preparation to get them ready for high school and give the high school counseling staff some more information to better support them as they make that big transition. The building-wide initiatives that we came up with through our coaching was to address the top 3 challenges, which I know some of this doesn't make sense, and Ms. Kavanaugh can provide to you our presentation that we shared with Draper faculty that kind of broke down what all of this data was. But basically, the student feedback was their biggest challenges were optimism, learning interest, school bonding, and reflection. So those are the things that we're really focusing on trying to address school-wide to help those students overcome those challenges, feel more connected, feel more hopeful. And a lot of that's being addressed through the circles, the restorative justice, things that we already have in place, but now it's just a little more tailored to those specific challenges that we learned about through the survey. Yeah?
student-based ideas on the survey, or is it something that really comes
So those topics are actually some of the tenets of what the survey feedback shows us from the students. Yeah. So yes, yeah, that was really eye opening through one of our coaching sessions. And basically what we kind of came up with, and there's some examples, and we can forward you what we have from the Pear Institute in terms of they give a couple examples of what a question might be that would give us that information. But really the question of optimism is whether or not they have hope for success in their future, and we feel like we do a lot to support the students here, but they might not always have exposure to outcomes beyond high school. And so getting them to see that there is more possibilities, more opportunities for them. So that's kind of how we are targeting like the optimism idea, and just kind of giving them examples and opportunities of there's more beyond where you are right now today. And you know, teenagers, it's common that they don't think too far beyond the present moment. So it's addressing that and getting them to see that they do have a lot of opportunities as they move forward.
SEL committee, teachers, people in the building that are looking at those tenants and getting feedback to see kind of what the next steps are.
I'm sorry, I keep forgetting to turn that on. Sorry, Mr. Vaca. I think that's great. Yeah, I mean, everything that you guys do is really great. But having like a survey on this sort of thing from kids and taking the feedback and then actually providing building-wide goals and initiatives on the feedback that you're not getting from national surveys, but that you're actually getting from our kids is very encouraging. So,
Yeah, that was pretty good.
yeah, right.
If they provide us.
You know, that they reported that.
Actual orientation, I think that found.
Empathy was
Empathy was actually a strength for our kids. So that was, we were really happy to see that because we counted them. That's what our whole start with the presentation is going to follow, is talking about empathy. So that's right.
I didn't even-
I found it.
Peer relationships actually.
peer relationships. Yeah. And we just presented to the Draper faculty at a recent faculty meeting. So that presentation we can forward you. Like I said, it kind of breaks down. It gives you a lot more detail than what we have here for you tonight. I was told to keep it brief. So, but it definitely was very eye-opening, and it's exciting to be able to have that data that is specific to our student body, and it helps us kind of tailor.
I'm kind of finding that intriguing as a parent as well. And the reason, especially the optimism portion of this discussion, I can envision myself sitting on the couch griping at whatever the news topic of the day is, or whatever's on social media, or coronavirus. And I can see why our kids may not necessarily be as optimistic as they need to be. I'm wondering if does this information trickle down to parents? Or trickle up? I don't know what the...
It may. I mean, this is the first year with the peer assessment. And again, some of the even more controversial things are, you know, when you have something like student suicide, which can happen certainly as early as middle school. How do you know where students are at? Well, the answer is ask them where they are at. Take the data. So again, I found it very surprising, you know, like no issues with empathy in middle school. That seemed counter to my experience, but these are our students. They might not reflect different cohorts I was used to. So it will first come with different initiatives that'll be going for students. Parents will kind of be our second line. We've had some parent evenings for educating, like for example, around suicide and around drug use. You heard, I think, Mrs. Kavanaugh talking about some of that. So some of that is still TBD. So students are our first line, but students aren't in isolation. They're with their families. The optimism piece in particular is less surprising because there's been a lot of studies about it. You talked about the news feed. For children, it's usually not the news feed as much as it is the social media interaction
Right.
with peers. So think of things such as body image and positivity. That's why you have like the Beautiful Me program for some of our young ladies especially. We know that there's a shift in how students are perceiving themselves, perceiving their futures, perceiving their peers, and to the extent we more explicitly identify what they think and believe, then we can, and again, this is to Mohan, the team's credit, we tailor what we're offering. So again, this is dynamic. This is as it should be, because the easy thing to do is just do whatever you've been doing. That's not really cutting edge. It's not addressing the needs of our students. So it's encouraging to hear that you're explicitly identifying the needs of the students and then evaluating them. I'm not aware, the peer assessment, this is all like cutting edge. This is 5 years ago, I'd never heard of it. So, it's good stuff. And to answer your question more directly, more is coming to the parents. We've got to get some of the student stuff ironed out first.
Sure, and I'm not trying to rush things. I think it's a credit to you that you kind of opened my eyes, and I think it's going to change. I hope it changes. I think I'll try to change how I interact with my kids on that couch, and how I, impress upon them that, Dad's griping about something tonight, but you can be a part of the future that makes a difference. So, thank you.
So I think that covers the gist of the pair, and we'll be sure to share out more specifics with you. And then lastly, something that we added this year, the last couple years we've been really proud of our Great Kindness Challenge that we had hold the last week of January. And to culminate that week this year, we decided to add our World Cultures Day. So we opened it up to all students. The week is hosted by our Draper Middle School Peers for Peace Club, but we open it, it's for every student to participate. And we asked kids if they would be willing to share about their culture. And the fun part, probably mostly for them, was to share a little taste of their culture and bring in samples of a food that was meaningful to them and their family. We had a really great turnout. The kids were really excited about it. And it was held during all 3 lunch periods. So students took the time to put together a poster or a trifold with facts and information about their culture, the dishes that they brought in to share. And then during lunch, students had the opportunity to go out in the lobby and visit with their classmates and learn about their cultures and taste their food. And it was great. And we had a lot of kids at the last minute want to participate that we sadly had to turn away because we didn't have the space in the room. And so we're hopeful that next year we'll have an even bigger turnout. So that was a new addition to our Kindness Challenge, which is under the umbrella of all the other things that we're still working towards our No Place for Hate designation.
Hello, everyone. Okay, so again, advisory council meeting, you'll see is our number 1 bullet there. It was K-12. So our takeaways for that, well, first of all, we also surveyed the whole 9th grade class electronically, as we know. Anything electronic is an easy thing for them. So they either did it on their phone or their computer. Just a short survey, and also data collection was much easier making it electronically. And we discussed the results of the advisory council meeting. So our focus at the advisory council meeting, as you've heard already, was transitions. So, and particularly for us, it was the transition from 8th to 9th grade. So outcomes of the council meeting and the survey results, students need more visual cues regarding their options. So for instance, at scheduling. So that was a big one. So we're working towards videos for next year. We want to do a virtual tour of the high school, also include the CAP building, and then also they don't have a whole lot of choices as an 8th grader going to be a 9th grader, but their art and music electives. So we want to do a video on those options as well, using students that are in the program to highlight those options and hear what they like best about it, that sort of thing. Another takeaway from the advisory council and the survey was club awareness. The kids were asking for more information on what's available in the high school as far as clubs and things like that. So we've decided to use the month of March. We've solicited for high school clubs to be able to go down during 8th grade lunch and set up a table and have some information for the kids the last couple weeks of March. So they will get some more information on clubs. Also for next year, seems like, well, we plan in isolation, so our 8th grade information night seems to fall during midterms for Draper. So we want to avoid that, so we'll be collaborating with the 8th grade counselor next year just to make sure that that is not an issue for next year. As far as evening programs, We've improved and expanded communication. You'd think old school mailing home. We've got away from that, I'd say, over the last 8 or 10 years. But we brought it back, and we do feel it's had a dramatic effect on our attendance of our programs. We've used it for every program and had great attendance. We think for our panel for college-bound juniors, I think it was probably an increase, probably 50%. So on our FAFSA workshop is a full house, and the outsiders that come in for that are very impressed with our attendance and the way it's run. So we've gotten some good feedback that. Another thing that we've done this year, go into the class meetings that are held in the beginning of the class or beginning of the school year, and gave actually the seniors, here's a little takeaway, here's what to watch for this year, all the programs that we wanted them to be aware of. And we did that for the juniors as well. So, and even our college fair in the fall, we had record attendance that was held in the CAP building. So, paper works for some reason. And we did this is in addition to school messenger and morning announcements and other things, and involving faculty to promote it with us. So we're blanketing it everywhere, I guess you'd say. The third bullet, evaluation of programs. Again, we've increased our use of electronic pre- and post-surveys for our kids when we go into classrooms. What do you know? Take a pre-survey and then a post when they've completed it, just so we can measure what exactly they're taking away from this. And that's helped to improve the effectiveness of all of our programs, I would say. And again, as I said, kids like to use computers, so it's a no-brainer with having them do the pre and post using their other electronics. And for parents, I think it's a plus for them too. I think they feel it's more confidential as well. So, and I think that's about it. So this concludes our presentation. Thank you all for listening to us.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right, so I'm going to briefly go over some of the components of the budget that we wanted to discuss tonight. This is actually the one that probably has the most components that we'll go over throughout the budget process, but we'll try to take a high-level look at them and be able to address any individual items that require some further discussion. So we're going to talk about general support, operations and maintenance, transportation, BOCES services, and employee benefits. So first of all, starting off with some updates since our last meeting, something that we like to do. If you remember, I gave you a very detailed calculation of how we came up with our tax levy limit calculation of 3.19%. Shortly thereafter, within about 72 hours, we got an update on a pilot agreement that was approved through the IDA. What it does, though, is it changes our calculation. It does not change the amount of revenue that we receive from taxes. What it does is it pulls a single payment out that one business will make, and they take that off of the top of what can be levied. So it changes the calculation as far as the number goes. It changed from 3.19 to 2.88. It does not change the revenue that we have from local taxes. So it's important to know that. Since last meeting, we've had several more retirements. We had 6 teachers at the time. We now have 13 total teachers and 2 teacher assistants. And I'm going to talk, go ahead. Correct. It is and it isn't. It's a difficult one because it really doesn't change the burden that much, because what would have happened if it was 3.19 and part of the taxes were paid by that company that is now paying them separate from the taxes, it still would have dispersed it in about the same way. They're actually paying, usually the pilots, what they do is they pay a little bit less in taxes as their companies are kind of getting off the ground, and they eventually, over the course of 10 years, depending on what the agreement is, 10 to 15 years, then will be fully assessed and pay their full amount. But it'll have a slight decrease on the burden of the tax.
Psychologically, it's going to feel better for going out with less than a 3 than over a 3.
That I would agree with.
That's what I was saying. This is the
Psychologically, it goes from above 3 to under 3.
between buying the car at $15,999 as opposed to
Do I think it'll help
$16,001.
pass the budget better? Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, agreed. So one of the things that'll kind of be a common theme, and I have some of these pieces up here, is just that, especially with some of the departments that we'll talk about tonight, we really are trying to contain costs as much as possible. And there's so many different initiatives that happen, and I'll go into a little bit of detail on a few of those. But over the course of the last few years, continue to do RFPs with things, try to get our best prices that we can, share services, do work in-house. We've recently hooked up with Amazon Business and trying to get a school account to try to save some money there. So we're constantly looking for different ways to save money. And again, I'll highlight a few of those tonight.
But starting with general support, one of the things that we'll do again with each area is to talk about the staffing that is involved in each area. So you see under general support, some of that is kind of our district office, business office staff. One of the things that I want to point out here is last year when we had this meeting, we had 2 payroll clerks and 2 accounts payable clerks. You see now 1.5 with each. That is one of the reductions that we had in last year's budget. There was a retirement and we didn't fill, and one of the people is now sharing a position between those 2 departments. So as we look at those actual numbers and kind of how those relate, the 2 things highlighted on here are directly related to retirements. Specifically, the retirement that we didn't fill in the business office, and then the retirement of Judy Andy as both the secretary to the superintendent and assistant superintendent for business and the board, and replaced with Kate. So we had a retirement that we didn't replace, and then another retirement of a long-term employee, and that's where you see some of the savings underneath here. Continuing under general support, you'll see that we have some of our insurance and things here. Right now, that's an estimate. It's not a known number, but we always estimate in that 7 to 10% range for insurance, hoping that it'll come in a little bit lower than that. But it's we look at our unallocated insurance, which is kind of our general liability, everything basically except the insurance on our auto, on all the buses and things like that. Moving into operations and maintenance, and this would be a good time to introduce my guests who are, at the time, had some of the best seats in the house, but now most of the people have left and they're sitting in the back. We have Joe Mayo back here, and then when we get into transportation, he's our director of facilities. Then we also have Dave Ricard, our head mechanic, and Randy Gerald, our director of transportation, and they're going to answer any of the questions for these departments that I may not be able to. But again, talking about staffing here with operations and maintenance, we actually have 2 less staff members than we had last year. That was another one of the round of reductions that we made last year. So you see how this kind of breaks down right now, but it's 2 less full-time staff members than we had. Still asking them to do the same, if not more work, though, just so that you know. Right, Joe? So, yeah, yeah. How he's doing it. Well, this is a good positive for Joe. So even with those reduced staff, constantly looking to try to do work in-house. And these are by no means an exhaustive list of the things that have been done, but I asked Joe to grab a couple of smaller ones and a couple of bigger ones of some of the things that have been done by our staff in-house. And so something small like, hey, putting the tags on the lockers at Draper, you get a quote from somebody to hire to do it, and instead saying, hey, I want to give this to one of our maintenance people to be able to do, you see that a little savings of a little over $1,000. Same thing with installation of some doors. Is that something that we could hire out for? Absolutely. We try to only do that, though, when it's absolutely necessary and not within the skill set of the people that we have. So you see some savings there. The bottom 2, the irrigation of the varsity baseball field and the upgrade of the site lighting, obviously some significant savings there. Those were projects that there are some savings in what it would have been done if we hired out, specifically with the irrigation of the varsity baseball field, but it's also probably something that just would have never gotten done. And it's made such a huge difference. The field's in great shape. There's so much time and effort that was put into it by the baseball program. And I would say that the irrigation of the baseball field was also probably hundreds of hours of work from our IT director, J.V. Dilbone. So he got a lot of sweat equity in that we didn't actually pay for. So that certainly helped as well. But saved a significant amount of money and did great things. The upgrade to the site lighting, again, got a quote for them to upgrade to new, more high energy performance lighting, and the quote for them to go around and do it was $30,000. Joe was like, well, that's ridiculous. I'm going to rent a lift. We'll grab some guys. We'll get in there at night. And the next thing you know, for $9,000, including the lift, any overtime, things like that, you see a savings of $21,000. And that's on top of Joe got the actual lighting fixtures for about $11,000 instead of $28,000 by going through National Grid and an incentive program. So, there are some of the things that you'll see that will just show up as costs, but unless you know what the avoidance of it was, it's kind of hard to put it in perspective. So some pretty amazing things done by the staff. And again, that's just a snapshot of it. Yes, it does. Yeah. But it's true, and they do just amazing things. So kind of looking at the detail, there's not a lot different. There's a few changes on the next slide, but essentially what you're seeing here with salaries is contractual increases on a little over $1 million in salaries, and then a little bit of a shift in the equipment budget from operations, which is more of kind of the day-to-day, cleaning and those types of things, to the maintenance portion of the budget, which you'll see on the next slide.
Chris, are we gaining anything from the solar yet?
Yes. So we're about 4 or 5 months into having the solar have an impact. And we're at least on pace. We had estimated around $50,000. Right now, it honestly looks like it might be more than that, that we would get per year. But we're about 4 months in of kind of getting those rebates, and we're actually just doing some analysis on our electric and gas bills recently. So we're absolutely seeing the savings from that. And what it's allowed us to do is to not increase. So if we go back to the slide, and I appreciate you bringing that up, but it's if we go back to the electricity and the fuel oil on here, it's allowing us to not increase even as we've put on these couple of new buildings. That stayed at $500,000 to $525,000 for several years. And typically you would have to see that go up, especially new bus garage, cat building. But we're able to kind of keep it, at least right now, keep it flat and not have to pull from other areas of the budget. So thank you for bringing that up. Here you do see an increase in some of the maintenance contracts. Now, we do have some older infrastructure, and we've already started kind of, identifying. We have a 5-year building condition survey that's mandated by the state that we'll need to do in the next year, where we start looking at some of those systems. There are some that are taking, more and more to keep up to date and keep repaired and working. Those maintenance contracts, though, are another thing that are bid out every year by the department to get the best price that we can. But we are seeing some increases there in the needs that we have, and that's around the time that you start getting to the useful life of some of your systems. And we'll be looking at those in the next capital project. And you'll see the increase here in equipment going from $15,000 to $20,000. It's the same $30,000 in equipment, but we see a little bit of a shift as to where that would be needed. I won't read all of this to you, but moving on to transportation. So a day in the life of transportation is extremely busy, especially in the last few years. And we'll talk a little bit about the driver shortage. But you kind of never know what's going to happen on a given day. And you've seen probably some of the local districts that have actually had to stagger some runs, had to go and pick some of the students up later, get them to school later, because they literally don't have enough drivers. And every day we have our mechanics driving, we have people in the office driving if needed. So we haven't hit that yet, but you'll see some of the impacts as we go through some of these budget lines of the driver shortage hitting Mohonasen. It's always been out there, but for the first time it's had an actual fiscal impact. And we'll talk a little bit about that.
I just want to let you know, in going from Kings to Old State, there's a sign right there for South Colony that they're looking for bus drivers, which is technically our run, but because they come and go from that side. So, but I also thought that it was a really good sign, like to think, wow, these bus drivers are on these roads all the time.
Yeah.
That we might think of doing signs maybe in between other districts, because I know our benefits are really good. So I just thought, wait, South Colony, that's not us, but it is on our run.
Yeah.
I hate to lose anybody, but I was ready to take it down, but I couldn't. But just thinking signs might work too, because it's kind of like one of those ones you do for elections, like that size.
Yep. Okay. No, I appreciate that. And yeah, and that is something that obviously constantly trying to do is to attract new drivers. A few different, at least 2 or 3 different, kind of drive the bus days, and another one coming up soon in the spring. Trying to put the one bus that we have out front with the big sign on it to try to attract drivers, putting things on Facebook, things like that, to try to get people interested. So always looking for that. The 2 things I want to point out on this slide, though, are the last 2, and that's that we have 2 contracted runs now, which I'll talk a little bit more about. But then we still have 6.5 shared runs with other districts, and that's another one where we're working with other districts to try to save costs, to try to be efficient. We actually have a student just today, Randy, worked with Niskayuna on a student that had lost housing in the district, is now living in Niskayuna. Niskayuna is going to be taking that student here, driving them home for us. So no additional cost to us, where before, especially with our driver shortage, we might be contracting out to pay somebody $250 a day to go pick up that student and bring them back. So, we do as much as we can with local districts. The transportation people work. They're really a good symbol of how we can all work together. They're amazing at accommodating each other and doing everything that we can. And sometimes it's a byproduct, too, to be honest with you, of having like the CAT building here. We have districts that are already driving here, or already transporting here. That allows us to help out with other students and districts to help us out. But they're constantly doing things like that. Transportation staffing, again, there's a reduction on this. We had 1 more mechanic last year at this time, and we had a retirement that we did not fill. What I really want to point out here, though, again, is that driver shortage and recruitment. We're doing everything that we can, but it's a nationwide issue. And Randy expects another 5 to 7 drivers to retire or perhaps leave the district at the end of the year. So, right now it's difficult to cover all the runs can become even more difficult as we look forward into next year. And there's a few new drivers in the pipeline, but not as many as we would need in order to fill that. Well, with the 5 to 7, we're already short. We would need, we have a couple, at least 5. So.
I hate to throw more on Mr. Vaca's plate. I'm just thinking that, is there a way to do a really cool, the wheels of the bus video? Something that we could put out on social media to say, hey, we need drivers. Something that's beyond the signs that we've tried already.
He said no.
Yeah. I'd be happy to help with that too.
So talk about in-house savings yet again. So, one of our great programs, the band program, and I'm sure that a lot of people know or have heard of the affectionately referred to as the Pumpkin, the bus that would have all of the equipment for the band. We had looked into getting a new vehicle, something that would work for them with a lift gate and plenty of storage. It was in the $40,000 to $50,000 range to get a vehicle like that. But Dave and his staff over the past year have been working on one of our older buses to turn it into something that they can use. So it's got a lift gate on it. It's got a hydraulic lift gate on it. You can see, and I don't know how easy it is to see in the pictures, but the one that's inside the back of the bus that you can see, they have a bunch of netting that was actually made out of seat belts where they can store stuff above. And obviously, they go to these competitions and some of these more affluent groups, I'll say, have some pretty fancy buses. And so the paint job that they've done on it too is just amazing. So they're hoping either this spring or no later than in the fall to have it kind of in the rotation. It's been, they have to obviously fix the buses that are driving their kids back and forth to school every day first. But whenever they can, get to work on this. And it's really been amazing. And again, it's just a huge cost savings compared to going out and buying a vehicle for that purpose. So thank you guys very much for all the work you've put in on that. It's fantastic.
We'd actually like to see that. So when completed, I'm hoping that the board can see it. We might bring it right here because the pictures don't do it justice.
They really don't, yeah.
It's unbelievable. So yeah,
Okay,
even seeing under the hood and the engine and stuff, it looks like factory.
To be fair,
we
Dave,
will bring it for the board to see when it's ready, so you can just walk right outside and go on board and see it for yourself.
Dave sent me a picture of the engine too. I'm sorry, Dave, I didn't put that in there.
Oh.
Does it only receive the designation Warrior 1 when the superintendent's on board? Is that like Air Force 1?
So transportation detail. So the things to point out here, you actually see reductions in salaries for overall, for the very large line you see in salaries there. And then the one for trips, and trips is specific to athletic trips. Those are 2 places you see reductions. So they are somewhat significant because, again, if you think about just percentage-wise going up on $1.5 million in salary, if it goes up 3%, you're already talking $45,000. So to see a decrease of almost $20,000, combination of a couple things, a few retirements of some higher paid drivers, but then also some runs that we legitimately could not cover anymore. And that's similar to athletics as well. And I'm going to talk about those in a second. But the equipment expense that you see, that significant increase, that is for one specific piece of equipment. That is a snow rake that the buses can drive under and take the snow off the top of the bus. Right now we have people come in with literally with hand rakes trying to get up into the buses and taking them off. It's dangerous to have that much snow up there. They actually just passed something where those would be aidable. So what would happen is you'd have that expensed in the first year of that $35,000, but you'd basically get 75% of that back in 2021-22 in transportation aid. So that kind of tipped the scales to where it made sense to do. So that's something that's in the budget right now, and that's why that increase is there. For the actual garage building itself, no real changes, and that includes heat, electricity, some of the other expenses that we have down there, like the copiers and that kind of thing. No, we don't see any need for changes in those budget lines.
Would we see in the future a reduction in the diesel if we're going with the gas now? Aren't we in the buses?
Yes. And again, same thing, is that right now, both of those lines, and it's another good question. We're getting closer and closer to 50%. I'd say, I think when I looked at what Randy had, it was like 39,000 gallons for diesel and 30,000 for gas. It used to be way skewed the other way. So we will eventually see that kind of flip. One of the things that we're trying to do is if we don't have to increase any of those budget lines, we don't really want to change them too much because you can see spikes in fuel costs and things like that. But right now, we are seeing a shift in our costs go more toward gas. And so eventually you're going to see that start to flip when our new buses are all gas. So this, unfortunately, is not something that's been part of these presentations in the past. So if we kind of go back 2 slides and look at the reductions that we have in salaries, one of the things that you'll see is they show up here. So the $75,000 is actually just 2 different runs that we have, kind of regular school runs, if you will, during the day to get students back and forth from school. So it kind of shows you how expensive those runs are. But again, a full-time driver with benefits, with a family insurance plan, with the retirement system, you know, is also relatively expensive. So still a little bit more so to contract out runs though, which is why we would prefer to have our own drivers. You have a little bit more control and it still is less expensive. For athletics, though, that was a completely new thing this year. We went out to bid last year because we literally didn't have drivers. If you can picture, you know, the Broughton Pinewood runs going on, and then you have an athletic trip that has to go out. Every driver is driving one of those Broughton Pinewood runs or another special needs run or out of district run, and we literally didn't have people to go on these trips. So in order to get out to the various athletic contests, we needed to contract out for any trips that started before a certain time, and I believe it was 3:30, because we just physically couldn't do it, and we couldn't be showing up late to contests at other schools. You know, especially like in the fall when light is an issue, and you can't make those happen later. So those are definitely impactful, and we now are budgeting for them based on kind of what happened this year. We're still optimistic. If we get more drivers, then we'll pull back on some of those private contracts and won't bid those out. Here's the bus proposition that we talked about last time, and kind of just a reminder, you know, we constantly have, when we go out and purchase buses, they have 5-year bus bonds. And so those rotate through. Every year that one comes on, one comes off. And so in this particular case, they're about the same amount, the $480,000. And so there's relatively little impact on the budget and on the taxpayers. Also, as a reminder, it actually hits the budget a year from now. So it'd be the 21-22 year that it actually hits as far as the expenses go. And as a reminder, too, we have 3 full-size buses that we're looking at, which are going to be gas, would have been diesel a few years ago, and then 2 8-passenger Suburbans. The Suburbans that are getting replaced will continue as part of our fleet, but they'll be now part of the maintenance fleet as like plow trucks or different things like that, and something that we'll use around campus. So we're not getting rid of the Suburbans, but just repurposing them. Quick overview of BOCES. Most important takeaway here probably is our aid percentage is getting up close to 70%. That is overall. What you'll find is within an individual service that can vary between, say, 30 and 65%. And when you take the sum of everything over the course of a year with BOCES, we usually go just a little over 50%, about 52 to 55% for the BOCES services that we purchase. So lots of numbers going on in this line, but again, two that I wanted to point out, and one that the counselors touched on earlier. That first increase, and I know it doesn't seem like it fits there, but with the way that budget codes work, it's called regional planning. But that's actually where the Northern Rivers counselors were. Last year at this time we had 1. So with adding that extra counselor, that is about 80% of that increase within that line. And as you saw in the previous presentation, the 2 counselors that we have are just doing a phenomenal job with our kids. It's been such a great addition to the services that we provide. And then the vocational education. And there's a 5-year rolling average that we use for CTE students that are in there. And right now we'll be paying for 70 CTE students. And then we also have 5 P-TECH students and 1 at Tech Valley High School. So that's where that $975,000 comes from. So employee benefits. This has been one in the last couple of years that has been massive and a huge impact on the budget, mostly because of prescription drug costs, but also because of the teachers' retirement system and some of the impacts that has had. So these are all basically either state mandated or contractual benefits that we have with our employees. You'll see here some of the big ones that can have that impact. The 9.53% that we have is kind of a final for the teachers' retirement system, which is increased from 8.86% last year. And then the employees' retirement system actually going down a little bit. Again, just as a reminder, and Shannon referenced it earlier, these are both very contingent upon how the stock market is doing. So they have their rates right now, but obviously the current stock market woes could certainly be something that we look at as we look into the next couple of years as to what might be an impact on school budgets pretty directly, depending on how things work out and if they turn around. So for health insurance, this has been a slide that hasn't been that fun to show in the last couple of years, but I think it's much better this year. You can look at some of the percent increases we have on our various products. So specifically, I want to call your attention to prescription coverage, which, we've had between 25 and 35% increases each year for the past 3 years and essentially doubled that coverage. If you remember, it's been specifically because of certain drugs, certain specialty drugs. Those have now leveled off, and we're actually going to be able to keep our prescription costs flat for next year, which is a huge benefit to looking at the overall of the budget, because that has been one of the main driving factors in the last few years. You'll also see a 0% for Blue Shield, and then even CDPHP, which is our highest, still under 10%. So overall, our health insurance is looking much better than it has in recent years. So CDPHP is actually community rated, like it's still within CASHIC, our health insurance consortium. It's still related to our experience, but it is prospectively rated, which means that they are deciding upfront, this is what you're going to pay us for the year. And if we pay them $1 million, but we have $2 million in claims, they eat that $1 million. So they're saying to you, this is what you're going to pay us, and that's it. With Blue Shield, it's something called retrospective funding, which is essentially self-insured. But what they do is they come up with a rate at the beginning of the year, and they say, you're going to pay us $1 million. And guess what? If we end up using $1.5 million, we owe them $500,000. So they can be a little bit more liberal with their rate setting, and we've had really good experience with them. Whereas CDPHP, because of the fact that it's prospectively rated, that means that they can't take any chances. So that's generally, in the last few years, that's been a little bit higher because our Blue Shield experience has been really good. And actually, for the first time this year, I believe our Blue Shield rates will end up being below what our CDPHP rates are. So an employees at open enrollment time, which is in May, can make a choice once they know the exact rates between plans. So as we look at the numbers, I highlighted the 4 that will be specifically impacted in that first slide we talked about, 13 teacher retirements and 2 teacher assistants. Because of the fact the deadline is March 15th for retirements, every time we hear somebody retires, we don't want to go back in and recalculate everything. These are numbers that will be significantly impacted by putting those retirements in. So you have various different ways that those retirements impact. Obviously on the salary line that we'll talk about with instruction next time is a huge piece of it. But once that salary line is impacted and goes down, you're also going to see a decrease in the teacher's retirement system contribution because that is active members and active salary dollars. You're also going to see a decrease in Social Security. The health insurance, you actually will probably see a little bump up because what you have now is, say you have 10 employees retiring, still taking health insurance. You hire 10 new employees, also taking health insurance. Net impact as you have 10 more employees taking health insurance. So even though the rates change a little bit and the percentages of contribution change a little bit in retirement, it technically adds more people to the health insurance plan. And the last one down there that has a 0, and you wouldn't think it would be something that you would highlight, that's something important to remember, that with the incentives that were part of the retirement, that's where those will be a part of the budget once we incorporate all those. So the retirement incentive money will be indicated on that line when we finally incorporate those retirements in. And so we'll revisit this slide as part of instruction next time, kind of show the impact of those lines. And the bottom line is it's a positive impact financially. It's just got a lot of moving parts. So we wanted to make sure that you realized that it's going to impact in a lot of different ways. We have 2 Board of Education seats that are open on the ballot coming up in May. Petitions are available. I don't believe too many have been picked up. And they are due back by April 20th at 5 p.m. and need at least 25 signatures on the petition. The next things that we will have coming up, our next board meeting 2 weeks from tonight, we'll talk about instruction and revenue, and again, incorporate some of those things that we know from the retirement. I know we won't know a final state budget at that point, but hopefully we'll have kind of some indication as to what's going on. Certainly then, after that, we will know the state budget by the time we adopt on April 6th. We have a budget hearing on May 11th, and on May 19th is the actual vote and election for the board. Any questions?
The only thing I have is that we had our coffees and conversation chats last week, which we appreciate being able to go, and I know everyone got to get to a few of them. I always enjoy it. I couldn't get to as many as I wanted to this year, but it certainly was nice to get into the schools again and have our conversations. Anybody else have anything?
I just wanted to mention that on Monday afternoon and Tuesday, NYSET had our committee of 100, which are active and retired teachers who go to the legislature and ask for various issues, funding for schools, for example, at increased foundation aid. And Chris Patterson and Maria Pacheco were there. I was there. We had some very positive conversations with our legislators from the Capital District, especially Angela Santa Barbara, who's always our hero over there. And we met with quite a few people during the day. I had a more positive feeling this year about maybe an increase in foundation aid. Of course, all that we are going through now with this coronavirus might impact. We don't know. But as far as Tuesday, we had a very positive feeling, much different feeling than we had last year.
I'd like to once again mention the 8th grade Draper team and congratulate Wade because he is the coach of that team, one of the two coaches. Co-coach. And he's going to take that team to Binghamton, going to states.
Yes, and if you had seen my living room and the kids about a week prior to the competition, you wouldn't have believed that they were going to pull it off. The paint is off of my kitchen floor, the living room is cleaned up, and the kids were just phenomenal. They did such a great job. It was so exciting to see how excited I think we had to pull them away from the front of the gym because they were celebrating so much.
They were still celebrating when they called the other teams up.
It's not about the other teams.
It was not.
But also kudos to Draper's other team had a 3rd place finish.
Yes.
And the high school team had a 2nd place finish, and they're going to states as well.
Mm-hmm.
And we're looking forward to representing Mohonasen well there. And the Brat team that you coached I didn't get a chance to see
They were adorable.
the costumes were phenomenal. And Superintendent Shine showed up too.
Right in my backyard.
Anyone else? Okay, public privilege of the floor. Does anyone want to address us?
As a frequent end user of the folks behind there, I just want to say, and I know you appreciate it, what a great job they do. I actually have gotten to know Dave pretty well because he drives often. They pull him off, and Randy has driven us several times. So it's like all hands on deck. And then, of course, Joe Mayo and his team. We would not, the success that you saw tonight for sure could not happen without the support of those folks. So thank you, and just wanted to, let you know as somebody who sees that every day in our work, it matters a lot to the kids too.
Thank you. Okay, under old business. Request for approval of second reading and adoption of the board policies. Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Under new business instructional, request for the approval and arrangement for the Committee on Special Education recommendations in student placements and Committee on Preschool Special Education. Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Request for the approval for Draper Middle School Science Club field trip to Boston Museum of Science on June 3rd, 2020. Do I have a motion? Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Request for approval for students to travel to the Adirondack Community College for April 7th, 2020. Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Under business and personnel, request for approval of the annual fire inspection reports. Do I have a motion? Second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Request for the approval of memorandum of agreement with Mohonasen Teacher Association regarding clarification of eligibility for a retirement incentive. Do I have a motion? Second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Under other items, approval of minutes from our February 24th, 2020 meeting. Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Financial reports as a whole. Do I have a motion? Second? Any discussion?
Yes. So I'm trying to get better about going through these reports and trying to learn something new a little bit every time. So if I could ask a couple of brief questions, and then I think there is one error that needs to be corrected as well. So is this too much if I'm asking specific detailed questions, or do we need to take that offline?
It's really up to you. It depends on what sort of, like how much detail you have. If you're just asking like format type questions, if you're the only one, Chris could answer them separately. If it's something that we can go through, fairly rapidly for the benefit of the whole board, then do it now. It's really, I defer to your judgment on that.
So this may be more of a comment than a question, specific question. There were a couple items in the appropriation status detail report that I guess list line by line what's being spent where. And I'm wondering if maybe at some point in time it would be helpful just to have a brief overview of how that report works. That would be one that I think I would benefit. I seem to recall going through some of that in the initial onboarding training for the board members, but that might be a good refresher. In particular, there were a couple of lines that jumped out at me. Payments to charter schools, tuition paid to public districts in New York State. I suspect I know the answers to these questions, but then just the overall format of the report, having a complete understanding would be beneficial.
I mean, you can either have an overview, or if you want to set up an appointment and come, we'll go line by line. That particular report, I go over line by line, not every time, but periodically through the year. I've got a copy of it I've printed out on my desk right now. Because it's basically, here are all the lines, what's being spent, and I'm always concerned, if we're responsible for every line, I need to know what every line involves so we can monitor, in addition to signing every purchase order along with Mr. Roberti. So every dollar we spend, we both look at every single one. So again, if you want to go through, it might even be more beneficial to go line by line.
Well, we could do that, but
it doesn't take that long.
I think even just a general overview of some of the highlight areas. Some of the areas that are a little more complex. I mean, some of them are very obvious, where what's being spent where, what's budgeted, what's encumbered, all of that. But other areas are a little less clear to me.
Absolutely.
So I think maybe looking at some of those highlights. And again, I don't think this is a huge priority right now. I do look at it every month, but I think if we've got a light board meeting some night, that would be a good discussion topic. And then I did notice one, I would say minor error, but it's a typo, but it does have a significant effect. On warrant number 8, total general fund reads, for warrant schedule 37 and 38, reads $24,924,836. I believe that's supposed to be not $24 million. I think that was just bounced over 2 decimal places, typo-wise. So my recommendation would be, can we approve these reports with that? If I could make a motion to approve this report with that correction made.
Yeah. There were some added ones on, and I don't remember what page, I don't have it with me, but that they were written in, which was the first time I've ever really seen things added. Did you see?
That happens with, I noticed when it's, usually it's the list of checks. I don't think I've ever gone to the level of tallying up individual checks amount. Am I correct in that? That sometimes, if there's a check here or there that hasn't cleared yet, and that's on the list that...
For some reason, I saw them this time. Might be there all the time. I was like, wait, this was weird. They're handwritten in.
I don't know that it's there every time, but
no. So maybe that's... It's supposed to be handwritten, just from the legal standpoint of it. Okay, so we will go ahead and motion on that. And so, all in favor?
I think we need to vote on the motion, though.
On his motion.
On his
Yeah, you need a
motion.
second, actually, on your motion.
On my motion, a second.
I'll second.
There you have a second. Yes, sir.
Amendment.
That's correct. Now you can.
So we have a
actually
first and
vote.
second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. We already did personnel. We need an executive session?
I do not.
No executive session, so we will adjourn our meeting this evening. Do I have a motion? Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Guess you really want to get out of here. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thanks, everybody. Drive safe.